What if I told you that a single organic tomato could be carrying enough pesticide residue to mimic half your body's estrogen? Yeah, that stopped me in my tracks too. Here's what kicked off today's conversation. I came across a YouTube short where the creator was explaining pesticide residue using these numbers. Non-organic vegetables have 0.00003 grams, but organic vegetables have 0.00001 grams. And so there was a claim that the non-organic have 300% more than organic vegetables have. And he was saying it's such a small number that they're basically the same, so stop wasting money buying organic. And at first glance, sure, we're talking about millions of a gram. Bleh. We're talking about millions of a gram. It sounds insignificant, but here's the issue. Numbers without context are just noise. So he kind of fell back on his own point. Without understanding what those residues actually do, those figures are meaningless. So today we're putting the missing context back in. When we talk about pesticides, we're not talking about harmless dust. We're talking about chemicals that are designed to interfere with biological systems, right? Many of them are endocrine disruptors, meaning they can mimic or block hormones in humans and animals. Here's the part most people never hear. Hormones operate at unimaginably small concentrations. Estrogen in the average woman is around 400 picograms. According to the Mayo Clinic, it's picograms per milliliter, excuse me. A picogram is literally a trillionth of a gram, a trillionth. So while that short was throwing around millions of a gram, like they're nothing, your endocrine system is responding to chemicals at trillionths of a gram. That's the scale your biology works on. And when I ran the numbers, it shocked me. A typical woman has around 4.5 liters of blood. According to medical news today. Okay. Multiply that by the average estrogen levels. I don't know why I can't say estrogen today. They're 400 picograms per milliliter. And you get a total circulating estrogen mass of about 0.000018. And you get a total circulating estrogen mass of about 1.8 millionths of a gram. So if you eat a tomato containing just 1 millionth of a gram of estrogen mimicking pesticide, that's over half of the natural estrogen level. If it's 3 millionths, that's 166% of baseline. And that's assuming that this woman isn't producing any of her own estrogen, right? This is just what's being put into her system. So imagine hers plus what's being added, and now you have 266%. Now, let's not forget about men. Men are important. Men have estrogen too, just less. They average between 10 and 40 picograms per milliliter, totaling around 0.22 millionths of a gram. That's not even a quarter of what one tomato, I'm just using a tomato as an example, of what one tomato could potentially have on it in pesticide residue. So for men, the same pesticide residues can drastically outweigh their normal levels. This is what tiny numbers actually mean when you understand biology. Now, here's the part no one mentions in those hot take videos. You're not exposed to just one pesticide. You're exposed to traces from your produce, from your grains, from your coffee, from your packaged foods, and even your water. I mean, really, even your clothes, day after day, year after year. These chemicals accumulate in fat tissues. They interact with each other and amplify each other's effects in ways scientists call synergistic toxicity. And often the breakdown products, the metabolites, are more harmful than the original chemical. Regulators typically test one chemical at a time in isolation. It's part of the approval process. But that's not real life. Real life is a chemical cocktail your body never asked for. So comparing two tiny numbers without considering the real world exposure pattern, that's not science. That's marketing. Now let's be honest. Organic isn't perfect. Organic farmers, they do use pesticides, but it's usually as a last resort. Actually, it's required that it's as a last resort. The pesticides are just derived from natural sources and they tend to break down more quickly. But the key difference is this: organic avoids most synthetic endocrine disruptors and persistent chemicals, and that matters. I have a friend who tried to grow almonds without pesticides, but her orchard was surrounded by conventional farms, and drift contamination made it almost impossible to maintain organic status. So even trying to be pesticide free can be an uphill battle. Here's what the organic movement has done right. It pushed us in the right direction when no better options existed, but it doesn't necessarily aim to regenerate the nutrients in the soil. And we don't want less bad. We want actually good. We want regenerative. We want true zero. And beyond personal health, there's the ecological impact. Pollinator collapse, water contamination, soil degradation. This is why organic was always just a stepping stone. Our real destination has to be something better. And that brings us to the third category the video didn't mention, and that's homegrown food. What I talk about a lot. When you grow your own, even if it's a tomato plant or a small garden salad, you control the inputs. You know exactly what's going on those plants and what's not going on them. Zero pesticides, perfect. Regenerative soil practices, even better. Suddenly, you're not avoiding toxins, you're building an ecosystem. With permaculture design, you create polycultures instead of monocultures. You build soil instead of depleting it. You attract beneficial insects instead of killing them. And you support pollinators instead of poisoning them. You capture water. You capture water instead of watching it wash away. It's not that organic farmers don't do any of this. It's that they aren't required to rebuild the soil. And so a lot don't. But you can. And when you do, your food becomes healthier, your land becomes healthier, you become healthier, and you take back your power. And nothing beats the nutrient density and flavor of a tomato picked minutes before eating it. I still have memories of going out into the garden with my grandma and picking the fresh tomatoes off the vine. Those were so sweet and so good. Homegrown in a permaculture designed garden is the gold standard because it's sustainable by design and regenerative by nature. All right, let's bring this home. The YouTube short wasn't the villain, but it was incomplete. And waiting for regulators to save us from decades of chemical exposure, well, history has shown us how that goes. What I keep talking about in my videos is what you can control is what you grow. You can grow something yourself. You can. I don't think it's an option anymore. Start small, start messy. You see what I've been doing. If you've watched any of my other videos, none of it is none of it is perfect. But I just keep trying and reevaluating and adjusting. Okay. And I do a lot of planning and design, and I have videos available for you to get started on your own journey. So just get started. If you can't grow everything, it's okay. Prioritize buying organic for the foods you eat the most often. And I know they can be expensive, but coming from somebody that's been buying organic since it was all I could afford was the organic milk for my kids, you really got to just focus on the worst offenders. So there's a list called the Dirty Dozen, something you can Google. I'll try and put a link down below. That's what you should focus on because, to be honest, some things have a wrapper and the pesticides don't get into where you're actually eating, so they're less affected. Because sustainability isn't about being less harmful, though. It's about being actively good for your health. That's why you need to grow something. It's about being actively good for your land and for the entire web of life around you. Anyways, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to me rant. If this episode gave you a new perspective, share it with someone who's thinking about organic food or thinking about starting a garden. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment or send me a message. Remember that happy growing is sustainable by design and regenerative by nature.